Okay, welcome to my first LinkedIn Live of the new year. Hopefully the technology now is working a little bit better than I tried before Christmas. So I'm hoping that was working now. And I wanted to come on to do a LinkedIn Live because I think we've had lots of questions over the Christmas period. People were asking a lot of things about obviously the market, what's been going on. It was a bit of a slowdown before that Christmas break for many people, but for some it's been incredibly busy. But for others it's been a bit slower. But now obviously with the new year coming back, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to secure a new job, take their new position, whether that's for a permanent position or for a contract role, either in the UK, Europe, or further beyond that. But there's certainly lots of opportunity at the moment, and I definitely think if you've taken a good time period off over Christmas to really think about what you want to do next, now is an absolutely fantastic chance to secure your next role and go out there and get work. So the reason I wanted to come on and do a LinkedIn Live is just to talk about some of the things that I think may be coming up this year, which I've made a little bit of a list for. And I'll be having some special guests coming on with me on LinkedIn Live, where we'll be talking about various topics throughout the year and various things that might interest you, particularly for those candidates who are looking, or people who are looking for their next job or thinking about their next job, or even if they're not, just giving them some ideas and suggestions of what they can do next. So those are some of the things that we'll be talking about. If I just go into a bit more detail on some of those, so you can think about some of these topics that might be of interest to you, and feel free to drop some comments in the stats. So I'll be interested to see that. I'm just going to read a few comments as well as they come through, so I'll be certainly useful to see that. I think Neil, thanks for joining us here and reading out your comment there. 50% of staff will be looking for a new role in 2020. Well, that's an incredible amount of people looking for a new role, which also tells me if 50% of people are looking, there's going to be 50% of jobs that potentially need a backfill, unless they are automating those roles, but they can't automate everything, of course. So I'd love to have your comments on that. But Neil, that's a great point. So thanks for sharing that already. And that might be a topic that we need to look at and think about what places that might be looking for a new role. So we're going to be talking about things like getting your CV up to scratch. That's obviously an important one, your personal brand. Been talking to people in the marketplace over the last few weeks, and I know some people who have been out of work for a while. We gave some recommendations and tips on things that they can do that they perhaps hadn't even done, the basics they hadn't done, to get their CV to be a bit more up to date. Perhaps they'd made it too long. Perhaps they hadn't even put that much effort into making it look good in today's market, or maybe it's one of those 15-page CVs that no one wanted to read. So just having that shortened sales type CV, because really it is a sales tool to enable you to have those conversations. So we'll be talking about getting your CV up to scratch, some of the things you can do. If you are just joining me on this LinkedIn Live and you fancy coming on and being a guest, you can just message me and come on and join me. It'd be really good to have you coming on as a guest here. Maybe you're out of work. Maybe you've been out of work for a while. Maybe you're between contracts and you've been contracts for a while. That's obviously always easier for you to talk live and talk about perhaps your own situation. So I'd love to do that as well with you. So yeah, you can come on and talk about that as well. Clearly, of course, at the moment, big topic, if you're certainly in the UK, is IR35. That may be impacting you. That may have impacted you already. But it's clearly a big thing in the market if you're in the contract game. There's still a lot of uncertainty in some quarters about what's going on in this, but I think it's pretty clear on the government's mandate and the direction of travel, of course. I think maybe there was some political mover before the election came in on what was a review looked like, but I don't think there's much of that. So I think you've just got to prepare for that, however you plan to do that. And I would love to talk to anyone about that as well, or their viewpoints or their feelings on it, or you can add your comments on that as well. So that'd be great to see as well. We'll be talking a little bit about that over the next couple of weeks. Now, you might be one of these people that are fed up with the UK and want to go and work somewhere else. Certainly, the weather's not been great at the start of the year, although it's quite mild for England for this time of the year. I think actually walked home in my jumper last week rather than my jacket, which was nice. But you may be thinking about working in other parts of the world or parts of Europe, or maybe even further afield. So again, I'd love to talk to people about perhaps those who have already worked overseas or are working overseas. Perhaps some of my network that are working in Germany or the Netherlands or the Nordics or some other country, the US as well. What the experience has been like for you, particularly if you've it's not your home country and you've gone there, what your experience is like at the moment. I'd love to talk to you on LinkedIn Live. Perhaps you're able to give your perspective to the fellow network in LinkedIn to say what it's like to work in that particular country. So love to hear from you there. I think one of the big things that's going to become just really important is going back to the basics this year if you're looking for a new job, and that's follow up. And making sure that you're making a concerted effort to follow up everything that you do when you are engaging with the job process, of course. So when you're looking for that next job, when you're looking for that next role, that interview process, that you're constantly following up as a candidate, I think often or not, that's one of the things that perhaps sometimes gets left behind. And it's certainly those who are persistent with a good follow-up will find that they perhaps get better results. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that as well. We'll be talking a lot about the candidate experience. So I'm not allowed to promote anything here, but I did have a very good podcast with Jerry Crispin. Jerry Crispin is one of the world leaders, renowned experts in candidate experience based in the US, been in the game for a long time, and talks a very good game, very knowledgeable about the candidate experience, and works with some of the biggest brands in the world about engaging with candidates. And it's probably one of the biggest complaints that I hear from candidates. If you look at LinkedIn and you put in about candidate experience, it's one of the biggest problems companies have with engaging their candidates. And certainly, if it's for permanent hires, there's a big challenge to ensure that people are getting back to candidates in a speedily manner, that they're rejecting them for certain roles in a good way, or perhaps giving them some value. I think that's another big challenge that people have got. And the other big stuff that's going on is how companies can engage that what they call contingent workforce, that contractor, perhaps where they have a portal, a system. Maybe they've got what's called an MSP, a managed service provider, sitting in the middle, and how they can engage that contractor to give them a good candidate experience just as much as anyone else. Because I think it's equally important where if you've had a bad experience applying for a role, for a contract role, and you've heard nothing back and you don't get any feedback from them, I think it's really important to even have some feedback back to say, hey, you've been rejected, you're not being selected on this occasion, whatever. But I know that's again a big challenge where you've got a large volume of people applying for a role. So I think there's a big piece around candidate experience, how they can improve that. There's a lot of software coming out around this. There's a lot of automation coming out around this, and I think there's still a huge amount of work that can be done, because it's not only about automating that process, perhaps it's just about giving it a good experience. People actually don't mind if they are not suitable for the role or they've not been selected. Generally, what they do mind is that no one bothers to get back to them and gives them a timely update. So I think that's going to be a really big thing in 2020, and I'd love to hear your view of that. And if it's just gone 5:15 here in London, and I think if you have that kind of experience and you want to share some comments on that, I'd love to hear what you've had as candidate experience. And again, we'll be having some guests on here. I'll be bringing in people. Maybe I can get Jerry to come back and chat to me on LinkedIn Live, because he's the fountain of knowledge of it. But I'm sure there's lots of other people that can share their stories about what's been good, what's been bad, and what their experience out there is in the marketplace at the moment, perhaps without naming any particular companies in particular. We're going to have some special guests as well. So if there's any subject that you'd like covered, if there's anything that you'd like to hear more about or know more about, would certainly love to do that. I think one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in the market this year, again, is getting finding the right opportunity at the right time within the right budget. Obviously, there's lots of changes coming, as we spoke about earlier with IR35, and we're hoping that more organisations that obviously are looking to provide a real statement of work solution will be able to provide a better engagement with those consultants who are working as a true consultant. Angus, I saw that comment pop up. Thanks for that. If I just read out that comment you mentioned, for volume recruitment, you are likely to get feedback for senior contract roles. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's very difficult, Angus, and you're right. Of course, when I talk about feedback, I'm not necessarily talking about feedback, individual feedback for every single candidate, because that's clearly very, very difficult. However, there is systems and mechanisms that allow you for when that contract has been selected, if they're using a system, all those candidates that haven't been selected for that role could automatically be sent an email to say they haven't been selected for the interview process. Now that could be implemented. I think it would be impossible and wouldn't make business sense for them to get back to every candidate with detailed information as to why they've not been selected. But certainly better systems and better processes can be put in place. And again, if you think about it, and Angus, to bring that point up, and thanks for bringing it to me, you want to give that candidate a good experience, whether you select them or not, because that candidate could be good for that next contract role. And even if they've just got a rejection email, an email saying, "Hey, you haven't been selected. We've already selected candidates for this role. Here's something of value that we want to give you about our organisation. So please come back to us in the future." I think that can certainly be done. But there you go. That's the systems. And don't forget, if we're talking about those kind of systems, you've got the big players out there in the marketplace. Fieldglass, now owned by SAP. You've got Beeline as well, of course. Those bit and Workday, but I'm talking about some of those big contingent workforce systems. They're still a little bit what I call legacy. They're not built on a new platform. They're built on legacy systems, so they're a little bit clunky, a little bit cumbersome. Certainly, as a user, they're not particularly great, but they're not particularly user friendly for a great candidate experience to be able to provide that information back. And of course, it still requires, and any system still requires, a lot of human intervention. Which brings on nicely actually to that interaction with those partners. So where you are engaging, or companies are engaging with contingent workforce, where they have to use some kind of system or portal to provide that candidate, that whole piece around the people engagement is the critical part. So, and when I talk about people, I talk about actually being able to have a conversation and have an engagement, not just sending CVs into a black hole, not getting any feedback, maybe having a chat online once a week, actually picking up the phone. The phone still plays a huge important part. I think people forget when they try to move towards an automated way of working, actually speaking to both the candidate, speaking to their recruitment partners, is fundamentally really important, because it's also about engaging and keeping your supply chain, your suppliers, or keeping your candidates engaged. Going a little bit off topic there, but I think it's a really, really important point. And I think having that level of engagement to your candidates and treating them like a candidate, rather than what I would describe sometimes by procurement as commodity, will do a lot of favors. And there's a lot of challenges out there in the procurement world as well, where procurement are driving down costs within contingent labor, so within contractors, and they can often be treated as a number, and perhaps sometimes the jeopardization of the project, the solutions, having the right people on place, making sure that they are supported, even thinking about logistics and transportation and getting those workers to the site, and how you're helping and supporting your highly valued contractors. Often that can be overlooked to drive down price, and sometimes or not, you go beneath that price level where the contractor can't work with at that price level anymore. It's not cost effective for them. There might be some tax implications, just maybe the rate, the location, the logistics, the hotel expenses, everything else. And of course, the supply chain also doesn't get enough margin to be able to make it justifiable. So there's lots of challenges there at the moment. I'll just read Angus's comment because it was a good one. I do find there's lots of agencies that are working through RPOs and therefore not necessarily working with indirect relationships unless the roles are suitable for volume RPOs are difficult to improve the candidate experience. Well, I mean, there's a few things on that, Angus. I mean, first of all, an RPO, for those who don't know that, that's obviously a recruitment process outsourcing for permanent recruiting. Lots of agencies work through that method because probably for two reasons. One, it's easy. Because they can sign up to something that they would then get the opportunity to supply without doing the hard work of building up direct relationships. That customer may have pushed to try and get that scenario where they're only working in that manner. Now, it might be that the smart recruiters, I don't say the smarter recruiters may look to build those direct relationships and work around that system to really engage and give that candidate a good experience. However, if that company has got they've got a top-down approach to putting in those processes, putting in that system where they're only going to work in that fashion, then it's very, very difficult. And it's very, very difficult, again, as you say there, Angus, that might fall into a black hole onto that system. The candidate has a poor experience. And then what happens is the hiring manager gets completely frustrated. The candidates get frustrated and don't bother applying again. There's hundreds of roles outstanding, and then the hiring manager goes direct with the partner. So it's a lot of challenges at the moment. I think that's a really, really good point, Angus. I'd love to explore that further, and I think I'll listen back and play to this when I can pick up the recording and think about something that we can perhaps bring someone in. Maybe you want to come in and talk about it, Angus. I'd love to talk to you on the show as well. So, let's try and do this. Tariq, I'll read a quick question out for you because I know it's about IR35. Thanks for just posting a question for me. Are you expecting companies to properly assess roles, particularly short 3 to 6 months contracts? As currently it feels like everything is being blanket covered in a panic. Tariq, it's a great question, this about IR35. And again, I don't have all the answers. I don't know. Everyone's taking slightly different views. However, I think the bottom line is if you're a large organization, a large company where you've got a large amount of contractors, I suspect that the risk factor is that you will blanket in people to be deemed inside IR35. So I think it's a big challenge for people, Tariq, and when they've got a lot of different things moving things within the organization, I think that many companies will be taking that approach. And I talk about the large scale companies. There'll certainly be smaller companies that may be taking a different approach and may be able to take a different approach. So I suspect you'll see more nimble and agile, smaller companies and consultancies that will be taking a slightly different approach. And I'm being cautious how I say here because obviously I don't know exactly what every company will do. I can just get a sense of the market. And if we talk about people who are calling up, people are asking lots of questions on this, asking is it inside or outside IR35, how companies are assessing it. But I think the wider thing is organizations have to ensure that they've got, if I think about the companies that we work, the bigger organizations have to ensure they've got robust processes in place because the risks are too great for them. And equally, I'd say that the risks are too great for the agency partners who, want to ensure that they're fully compliant. And there may be organizations that don't take that same degree. There could be agencies or companies that are perhaps one might even outside of the UK that might still be willing to assist with roles in the UK. All I think about is just make sure that you are working in a compliant way. The fee payer has to make that determination, or the determination comes from the end client, and then the fee payer has to ensure that it's fully compliant. So, Tariq, there's lots going on in that area. Love to have a chat with you about it in a bit more detail. I mean, IR35 is a whole big piece. You might want to check out some of the posts if you search for them on LinkedIn. You might not know how to do that, and it's some of the basics actually, but just even searching for comments or content on LinkedIn, if you just go into the search bar on LinkedIn and put in what IR35 as an example and press comment instead of people search, you'll find some fantastic things coming up there. So I hope that's useful for you. Peter, nice to hear from you. Long time no speak. I mean, that's always difficult to speak to everyone in this industry. Peter, you just mentioned there, how are you finding the market post-election? Some clarity for British Brexit position. I'm pretty optimistic, actually, Peter. I think, but I'm always an optimist. I think it's very good. I mean, I think some people have only just started to come back this week, where those without children have had an extended break, and I don't blame them. For those with children, obviously they were back probably last week. I'm feeling pretty good, actually, and I think there is a lot of optimism in the marketplace. At the end of the day, a lot of projects, a lot of things got sidelined, got pulled last year, or maybe even for the last 3 years. And I think now we have a lot more clarity, particularly around Brexit, and certainly we're going to find out a lot more in a couple of weeks' time once things go underway on the 31st of January. I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, I'm looking for a good outcome. I think we always have to remember, a country or the UK will certainly find a way. Whatever the outcome, we have to find a way to move things forward. And organisations are really, really keen to get things moving, get things done. I mean, they need to do this. They need to get projects done to remain competitive, to sell their products and services to customers. And I think we'll find that should be a large intake. Now, of course, there's a lot of talk at the moment about how they bring those projects to fruition, which could be, where they increase their full-time headcount. They could be using continuous contractors, but mindful of the way IR35 is taking that. They could be looking to outsource more projects, whether that's outsourced to nearshore organizations or further afield. But there's a lot of that going on as well. And, you could see that as a threat to an independent contractor. And there's certainly, again, if you look at comments on LinkedIn, there's certainly been organizations like some of the large banking organizations that perhaps have looked to go down that route. However, I think we all know that, just because you're outsourcing to an offshore team doesn't mean that the results are going to come the way that you want it. And of course, it's important to have that high quality of people that are working perhaps on site or at the best interest of the business, who are really close to the business and looking out for the best outcome for the project. So I think there's some great things, Peter. Again, I'd love to talk about that further. I think it's a great subject. If you fancy coming on with me next week on LinkedIn and chatting about that, I'd love to talk about that as well. So those are the kind of subjects we're going to be talking about over a couple of weeks. We're going to be talking more about IR35. We're going to be talking about the candidate experience, how that can be improved in the marketplace. Maybe we'll get on, try and see if we can get an HRD, an HR director from one of the companies to jump on for a LinkedIn Live and talk about what they're doing. Angus, you might even know someone that I can tap up who might be interested in doing that, but I've got a few people in mind as well. I'll take a message, a quick question from Fabian. Fabian, thanks for asking that. I'll read it out for everyone else's benefit. Hi, David. As a recruiter, how will you react after you had identify a candidate for your client? After a few days, you get a feedback from the customer the candidate is the right one they have been looking for. 1 week after your client come to you and say, sorry, I'm looking for the candidate with the nationality in your country. Your candidate is that of a permanent resident. Well, Fabian, I mean, and I thought I'd read that out, by the way. So, well, look, first of all, Fabian, I'd always say, yeah, I wouldn't react well to that personally. But that, if that's the approach that they're having, then first of all, it's really disappointing to hear that that's been said in the marketplace. Second thing is, I would just walk away from that kind of thing, because that is not the kind of organization that I'd want to be working with. I mean, there may be reasons. There might have been I can't think that there would be any reason why that they would want someone. I mean, unless there was a language skill that was required of them. But there can't be any reason for that. And if they'd actually written that in writing, I think that's disgraceful. I think discrimination in all forms, for example, is still there. And I think the problem is it's a darker side that isn't often talked about and shown in writing. Fabian, reach out to me. I'm not sure if I can help you directly right now with your background, but I might be able to connect you with some people that are. But I think certainly that's not how people should be engaging. And I think if that's the way they're coming back and handling that wouldn't be a company I'd be interested in. And I would get out there, Fabian, and go and have a look for some other roles. And I just brought up, as we were chatting as well, I just brought up your LinkedIn profile. I can see you've had a number of years working for some pretty impressive companies within the telecoms networking space, I would say. So you've got a wonderful, track record. You're obviously consistent in what you do. You've shown that. And no doubt also you speak French as well, obviously. So that's good as well. Much better than my schoolboy French, because I didn't bother, too busy messing around with the girls at school. So yeah, Fabian, I would just take it off at water off his duck's back. I mean, there's nothing you can do. You can't change their ways. Just put that company aside, refocus all your energy. Someone might have a different view for me, but I hope that's helpful for you as well. Okay, well, we've been running for this for about 30 minutes on LinkedIn. I just wanted to check out to see how interested this would be for people to have a chat about. It might be interesting to see. I think, Peter, you said there, what's your take on the I-35 government review due in the middle of March? Peter, I don't think they're going to do anything. I'll be honest. I really don't think they're going to do anything. I mean, HMRC want to increase their taxable revenue. Let's be honest. I don't see there being anything. And I think what it doesn't help the marketplace by saying things like this, because all it does is put people in a situation where they keep holding off, and then, they're not able to make a decision. There's a lot of people out there who have already consigned to the fact that this is coming in. There's others that generally believe that, it won't, or Jeremy Corbyn might be back in government. I don't know. But there's lots of things going on at the moment where it's not giving clarity. And I think, to be perfectly frank with you, yeah, exactly. 0 points. I think you're completely right there. And I think it's time to unfortunately just get on with it. And if you might have there'll be lots of contractors out there that right now will be saying to themselves, do you know what, I'm going to sit out in the market, I'm going to buzz off to Bali or Thailand, go and have 6 months in the sunshine. I don't blame them, and I wouldn't mind joining them. So I'll have a chat with my wife and see if I can. There'll be others that need to pay bills. They've got mortgages to pay. They've got family to feed. And I think, you need to take the approach that I don't think anything's going to change, Peter. But who am I to know? I could be completely wrong. What do you think, Peter? Let me know on the comments. I'd love to know. Anyway, those are the things that we're going to be chatting about. If there's a particular subject you'd like to delve deeper into, you want to have you want to have some feedback on, I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll be doing more of LinkedIn Live if this goes well. We might do it on a daily basis, Monday to Thursday. I think we'll leave off Friday so we can all get home and enjoy a weekend. Otherwise, yeah, look forward to speaking to more of you, and hope you have a great evening for a Monday. There's more going to be coming on Tuesday. If you've had a bad day, put it behind you and get on. Tuesday's a new day. And if you've had a good day, then make sure it's another one tomorrow. Peter, thanks for the comment on Agree. And yeah, thanks for joining me on LinkedIn Live. Hope that was really helpful for you. Take care.